Hello, everyone. This is Don Miller from Concept Searching. With me is Rob DuMont from RKO-Solutions. Rob,
Hi, everyone.
are you there?
I am here.
Excellent. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, very well, thanks. How are you?
Real good. Welcome, everyone. Today, we are going to talk about email and really the overwhelmingness of it. We're actually calling today's session Drowning in Content. Managing email and file shares. Is it just too hard? File shares we've attacked last year, and so one of the new components that people have been requesting information on has been email. And so with RKO and their domain expertise, we're going to talk a little bit about email, and then of course we're going to show how conceptClassifier, which of course automatically applies metadata for content in Sharepoint, but pragmatically speaking outside of Sharepoint as well, including file shares, and as we'll see today, even email. So again, that's what we're going to be talking about. First, we're going to give some overviews about the companies. Second, we will talk about the Smart Content Framework and, of course, adapt it as how it would actually apply to email. We'll talk about some different scenarios that are similar to email, but again are a little bit different, and then we'll do a demo, pragmatically speaking, like we always do. Again, about concept searching, we were founded in 2002, shipping product in 2003. We are Microsoft's go-to partner as it relates to auto-applying metadata to content, as well as term store management, i.e. Providing a very intuitive user interface to allow people to not only manage taxonomies, but actually to create them. And really, when we talk to different clients today, the number one problem that we see about working with the term store is people don't even know how to create that first taxonomy. And one of the great things about Taxonomy Manager is it does allow you to do that. Now, as I've mentioned, we are a software company. There are 4 key components that we'll be showing today: Concept Searching, Taxonomy Manager, conceptClassifier, and Concept Taxonomy Workflow, which make up the product suite. With that said, I'd like to go ahead and introduce my colleague, Rob. And Rob, if you could provide a little background about yourself as well as about RKO-Solutions, it would be greatly appreciated. And then we'll continue to move on. Rob, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Don. So I'm going to be quite brief because I know that everyone's here today to see the exciting technology solving business problems, not to hear about me talk about myself and my company. But really briefly, RKO is a Sharepoint company. We have specific expertise relating to sharing and collaborating on files and content and documents and emails in Sharepoint. In order to provide the best end-to-end solutions for our customers and clients, we have a number of relationships to round out Sharepoint's offering, with concept searching really providing the most exciting and innovative of the bunch. From a delivery perspective, we're wholly focused on bringing success to our clients. We attempt above all else to make our sponsors and their end users elated, and we don't accept anything but success in our projects. All this is made possible through intense dedication to every single project and the more than 15 years that many of us have been focused on delivering such solutions in this space. Myself, I've been working almost exclusively with enterprise content management, besides dabbling in CRM for a few years, for 14 years now, and I've pretty much done it all. I have been an implementer, developer, business analyst, project manager. I did pre-sales, technical support. I was an international expert helping people with email management for a couple of years, and now I manage a bunch of different things here at RKO. So next slide, please, Don.
Yeah, and before we go into what the CIOs are complaining about, I would like to just make one announcement as it relates to housekeeping. Please feel free to text your questions, and I should say chat your questions, and then we will try and get them to them at the end of the slides and or end of the demo. And of course, as usual, any questions that we don't get to on air today, we'll actually send out as an email to everybody who's actually attended. We are going to, of course, send these slides out, and of course, we will make a link for the recording. With that said, Rob, and your domain expertise around the whole email problem, why don't you share with us what the CIOs are complaining about and some of the problems that you've seen as a thought leader in the email space?
Well, I think these bubbles really summarize well what it is that we're hearing, and really why we're so excited about our relationship that we have with concept searching and what it brings to our clients. We tend to work with larger organizations, and it really seems that no matter where we go and who we talk to, the issues are almost always the exact same. It doesn't matter whether we're speaking with somebody who's just beginning down their path towards an enterprise content management or a records management solution, or if they're 5 years along that journey and are actually nearing completion on that initiative. We still hear the exact same things from CIOs and upper management, that user adoption really is a challenge, that they've gone a long ways, but they're still finding that certain areas, like dealing with the mess of files out in their file shares, or dealing with the ridiculous volume of content that's stored in their emails, is just too difficult for them to deal with. So what we've really found is now, with what concept searching can bring to the table in terms of the auto-indexing and taking a lot of the decision-making and a lot of the burden off of the end users, we really feel that there's finally a really great solution that we can bring to bear to solve that last mile of the journey.
Excellent. Well, as you mentioned, we have a solution, and that solution is what we call the Smart Content Framework. And really, it is definitely one of those solutions where the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, because it isn't that we just have a great search solution or a great taxonomy solution or a great classification solution or a great migration solution. It's that you need those 4 pieces to actually have smart content. And what do I mean by smart content? I mean content that when an end user uploads a document or an email, that we automatically read it, understand it, apply the governance actions to the document or email, the policy and privacy actions, and then move it to the appropriate location within the company. That's what I'm talking about when we say we have a solution, i.e. the Smart Content Framework, that addresses not only regular content, i.e. Office documents, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint presentations, but pragmatically speaking, emails, and really if we're talking about the enterprise, other solutions like your CRM platforms or databases like SQL and or Oracle. Now, I did mention we'd talk a little bit about use cases. So we are working with a couple of government accounts where we're actually taking email, and we've actually shown that you can take that email from Exchange Server, upload it into Sharepoint, automatically apply the metadata, and again, without the end users having to do anything, automatically apply not only the metadata for findability, but also the metadata for governance and the appropriate policy on the content that you're working with. We've also worked in the oil and gas space where we've taken content that is getting uploaded into SharePoint, content that could be just a regular Microsoft document, but actually after looking at the document, realizing that the item that we're working on is actually a document of record, and therefore either updating the content type, applying the content type, or changing the content type to the appropriate records management document type, and then applying the appropriate policy actions to the content itself. Just as an FYI for everybody on here, we'd like to see an external UI of our solution. If you go to marketresearch.com, which is the largest market research repository for documents, you can actually see the solution working where we're just applying metadata to improve a search platform. Now, this isn't actually applying the governance policies component to it, but it is actually dramatically improving the value of the content itself so that an end user can actually find the information that they're specifically looking for. And of course, there's the U.S. Air Force, and so when we talk about applying policy, that happens to be one of our go-to customers, and that's because they have over 2,000 different policies that have to be applied to content. Can you imagine being an end user and trying to figure out which policy to apply to a document or email when it's one of 2,000 and you have to actually apply that? Well, of course, it's almost impossible. So again, with our solution, we automate that process and apply the policies for the end user. So when we talk about that problem, and as Rob mentioned, email is overwhelming, right? We just have too many emails. How could we even broach that subject? There's a couple different problems, but really the problem is it's a behavior modification problem, i.e. we're going to ask the end user to do something that they do not do on a daily basis. And that counts not only for emails, but content that we create on a daily basis, like a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, or even something on your website. Again, generally speaking, end users don't tag content, and that's because they never have had to do that in their entire life. So it's a behavior modification problem. And rather than try and fix that behavior modification problem, what we're going to show you is that we can automate that entire process and tag the content better, more consistent for the end user without the end user having to take the action. Now, here we see some key concepts. And again, we've talked about these concepts, but I'll just highlight them one more time. If we apply consistent metadata, we're going to improve the findability of the content. When we make the content transparent, that means people can know that it's consistent. When it becomes consistent, we know we can take governance on it. When we take governance on it, we know we can apply actions to it, i.e. what do we want to do with the content, how long do we want to keep the content, and then we can actually even target the content. Who do we actually want to push the content out to? So with good, consistent metadata, we solve 4 critical problems across every organization. And of course, this metadata is going to help us reduce risk because the content has become transparent. It makes it very easy for us to expose and leverage for eDiscovery audits. And then lastly, when we're talking about Sharepoint, because we have a native integration into the term store, everything that we do is going to lower the overall cost of administration, because rather than having to build custom code that integrates our solution or any solution into the term store, everything that we do is native and therefore lowers the overall cost of the administration itself. Now, we just talked about that behavior modification problem, and pragmatically speaking, it's even worse than that, because the true problem is that it's a subjective approach. And by that I mean, it's not that I can't tag a document, and it's not that Rob can't tag a document, but I know if you give us a document or email and say, hey, apply the appropriate value to this, we've done enough focus groups that we know that we as separate individuals will tag it differently. The true problem is if I give that email or document to Rob in the morning, and then I ask him to actually tag it at the same, at 4 p.m., the same document, Rob is actually going to tag it differently because his mind frame is going to be different at 9 a.m. versus 4 p.m. And so the true problem isn't just consistency, but actually getting the person to, and I should say the true problem is consistency and actually getting the same person to tag the document in the morning the same way they would at the end of the afternoon. Now, how do we do this? We talked about the SMART content framework. Of course, that sounds like a great little concept, and I'm sure everybody wants to be smart. But how do we actually do it? Well, again, we talked about the pieces that make up the suite, i.e. the solution. And the first piece that we do is build out what's known as a multi-word concept index. So how does that work? Well, if I take these 3 terms by themselves, triple meaning baseball, heart meaning love, bypass meaning freeway, by themselves, pragmatically speaking, they're ambiguous. But as soon as I put them together, triple heart bypass, we all have a very good understanding that I'm probably talking about open heart surgery. So the first thing that we do is build out this multi-word concept index for our end users. And it comes from their content. So we know that the terms and the multi-word concepts that we extract are accurate because it's coming from your content. That is going to underpin everything that we do going forward. And as you'll see, that is what will help us dramatically improve the speed to build out term sets, as well as to build out the classification on the content that we're working with. And you'll see that what we have to offer is a very intuitive user interface, not only for the business users, for the people who are uploading the content, who don't actually want to do the tagging, but also for the technical and administrators who actually have to build out the rules. Our solution is a rule-based solution, and again, we'll go into that in more detail in just a minute. But again, the key being that it has to be intuitive, both for the business users as well as the administrators that start working with the solution to begin with. So the first thing a business user would do is model and validate the content. Again, we build that multi-word concept index. And once we know that the model itself is accurate and that the content would be tagged correctly, that's when we go to step 2, which is to go ahead and turn on the auto-tagging component. Now that actually works equally well with Sharepoint as well as file shares. And pragmatically speaking, any content repository that you have across the organization to apply the metadata to improve the findability. With the migration product, which is taxonomy workflow, we can actually align it with business processes. So we can actually move the content from point A to point B for governance, sensitive information removal, or in alignment with your corporate policies. And then lastly, because we have the ability to take action, we can actually even manage the whole life cycle of the content itself and actually archive or delete it from the system. Now, as I mentioned, there's a couple of different products that we're going to talk about. Concept Taxonomy Manager is the tool that actually builds out the taxonomies or helps you build out clues to support the terminology that we're working with so that we can automate the tagging process. The great thing about this tool is it's very intuitive, very powerful in that it supports many different types of clue building, but it gives the end user, and I shouldn't say the business end user, it gives the administrator who's actually building out the classification an ability to do instant feedback on the rules that they're creating to make sure that what we're working with is actually relevant. If we're working with the taxonomies, sometimes we want to distribute that workload, so we want different people to support different branches of the taxonomy itself. And so, of course, we support that ability to check in and check out branches as needed for the end user. Now, this happens to be the first little screenshot of what it looks like for the business user. And the nice thing that we see here is that we're automatically applying metadata, not for just one term set, but for multiple term sets. And more importantly, what I'm showing here is not only Sharepoint 2010, but this is actually showing our product working in Sharepoint 2013. And because we're talking about emails, when we do the upload, we can actually send a notification to the person who created the document. And of course, we can actually just classify the email itself. And so again, we'll actually show that today in just a moment during the demo. And lastly, we talked briefly, and we'll only talk about it lightly because we're actually saving this for another webinar in the very near future, but the ability to actually move the content from point A to point B within Sharepoint and or file shares and or hopefully any repository that you work within your organization. Now I have to be careful on that last statement because while we try and support every application and every new application, pragmatically speaking, this is a framework tool and it gives us the ability to build out a template to support the migration from that repository to the new repository. But we haven't done every repository, but as a goal and a roadmap perspective, that is what the company is on the road to do. Got a little tongue-tied there. Lastly, on the architecture side, again, this is just to show you that from a native perspective, we support Sharepoint 2007, 10, and 13 natively, as well as file shares. And with all of the other repositories that I talked about, we leverage our web service and XML API to integrate into those other applications. Again, that means it's easy for us to support your SQL, your Oracle, or records managed repositories like Documentum, but pragmatically speaking, the goal is to provide an integration that supports any other application across your enterprise. So not only can we support Sharepoint, but also the rest of the company. Now with that said, before I slide over to the demo, is there anything you'd like to add in, Rob, before we slide over and show uploading emails into Sharepoint and automatically applying the metadata?
Not at this time. I think we can jump right into the software demo. Sorry, Don, not sure if you heard me there, but I don't have anything that to add right at this moment. I think we can jump right into the software.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, it's just the screen sharing will not let me screen share my, maybe I know what it is. There we go. Okay, so Rob, do you see the browser and a Sharepoint 2010 library on your screen.
I am actually still seeing your architecture slide on my screen right now.
Well, thank you very much. And do you see it now? And again, I'm looking for you to see the 2010 SharePoint library.
No, I'm afraid it still hasn't changed.
All right. Nicola, could you please pause just the screen sharing, and then I'll restart it here and see if we can't get it going. So I am trying to show the screen, and it is not letting me show. Do we see it now?
Yep, there we go.
Excellent. And now let's go ahead and slide over to Taxonomy Manager. Do you see the switch to the other browser?
Yep, it's following you perfectly.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to just say that what we see here is a typical SharePoint 2010 library. We're going to go ahead and upload a document. And I'm going to say, hopefully, Rob, you see that I'm uploading a document right now. I thought I just saw my screen thing stop again, so I'm asking just to make sure.
No, it's looking good. It's looking really good from this end.
Okay, excellent. And so what we should see is a PDF. So, we talked about Microsoft documents and Word and Excel and PowerPoint. But what about PDFs? Well, this is a PDF. And so what we see here is that in this particular document library, we have 4 term sets. We've read through the document, and 3 of the term sets we've actually chosen to apply this metadata. The metadata, again, the end user didn't have to do anything. All they did was upload the document, and this is what it would look like if you were the business user. The beauty of this approach is that we're not doing the behavior modification, right? We're not asking them to actually take action. And so again, without anybody doing anything, we've automatically applied this metadata to the document, completely automated. Let's try it again. Do the same process, but this time we're going to upload an email. Now, I'm actually just uploading an email myself here, and this is just to show that from our perspective, again, we really don't care what it is that you're uploading into SharePoint. What we're going to do is read that document or that email, and we're going to apply the appropriate metadata to it. Now, this one is going to be interesting because you see here that we have the ITAR workflow. And so what we're going to see here that's going to happen is that we're going to upload this document into our shared document library. But then, because we're reading this document or this email, we see that it's an ITAR email. And we know that that stands for the International Trafficking in Arms Regulation. And if this email accidentally gets sent to a foreign national, it will actually cost our company about $200,000. So rather than let that get forwarded, we're actually going to move that to this ITAR folder here in just a moment. Now, as I mentioned, we have migration capabilities where we can actually move content into and out of SharePoint, but there are other tools that often are used as part of the process to upload email into SharePoint. And so that would be up to your partner, like Rob, to determine what would be the best approach for you as the customer to leverage as a tool to upload the content into SharePoint. Again, it could potentially be concept searching and taxonomy workflow, or it could be another tool. Are you there, Rob? Did I hear you wanting to say something?
Yep, exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned my name because I actually wanted to actually jump in here. I think that what we've seen here, we've seen adding an individual document, and it's as simple as just adding it. The user doesn't have to worry about all the other additional tags and indexing that the concept searching tools are taking care of in the back end. And I just wanted to throw out there that it's very beneficial when you're adding a document, but when I'm out in the field and I'm talking to my clients, they're not adding one document, they're adding 10 documents, or they're adding 20 emails. You might have a user that has taken their emails and put them into a folder in their Outlook, and now they want to take those 20 emails and put those into SharePoint because they're relevant to a project or to a client or to a legal matter that they're working on. And the ability to just take those 20, use drag and drop tools to add them into SharePoint and have concept searching automatically make sure that those get sifted through and put in the right locations with the right indexing information. The amount that saves the end users is just astronomical. And the impact on ensuring that you have end user adoption, which means that you get the most out of your investment in SharePoint, it cannot be measured. Well, it probably can, but it's very, very high.
So Rob brings up an interesting problem. So we've shown one document. Well, what if I want to do multiple documents? Well, again, we're going to leverage conceptClassifier, and let's just go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and upload multiple documents. We'll upload an email. We'll upload some PDFs. Let's not go too crazy. Let's upload 6 items, because again, really, there's a couple approaches that you have. It's either to upload a document one at a time, or we upload multiples at a time. Now again, we would default that back to your professional services company, i.e. Rob, to make the recommendation on what is the best approach based on what your enterprise problem is that you're trying to solve. Because there's certain places where I think taxonomy workflow is a great fit. However, there's always little nuances, and there might be a better solution and a better fit. But again, I'm going to leave that up to Rob to let him leverage his domain expertise around enterprise content management and email to make the best suggestion for you. Now, here we see that we've uploaded multiple documents, and what we're going to see is that one of the documents has already received some metadata on it. You see the other documents are pending, and the first email that we uploaded, which was the David Wu email, we see that that document has actually been moved. So let's see what happened to it. We look into our for official use only folder. We see nothing. We go into our ITAR folder. And we see that this document was actually moved here because, again, the ITAR metadata tag was applied to that document. Again, David didn't have to worry about it. We read the document, and we moved it to the appropriate location. We could have just as easily moved this out of the system completely, moved it to an archive repository, or again, purged it from the system altogether. Now we'll come back to our shared documents library, and we'll look at those documents in just a minute. But before we do that, let's just see how this actually works in SharePoint 2013. So we'll go ahead and upload a document, and we're going to do the same process, which is to grab a document, upload it, and again, rather than have the end users actually have to read the document and apply the appropriate metadata, which is a behavior modification problem, we're going to show that we can automatically apply that for them. And again, since we're talking about email, let's just go ahead and upload an email first, again into SharePoint 2013. And I'm going to cross my fingers and hope, because what we should see is that, again, we're going to read the document, we're going to apply the metadata. Again, rather than hoping that we can modify the end user's behavior, all of the metadata will be applied to it automatically. And what we see is that we've read through that document, and all of these values right here have been automatically applied to that document. That is the ROI, the immediate ROI brought to you by conceptClassifier. And so every time that that document is uploaded, rather than crossing fingers and hope that we're going to tag it consistently, what we've shown is that we're going to read the document and apply all that metadata for them. Very powerful. And of course, take action. Now let's go back to our initial site that we started with. We'll just do a quick F5 and we'll actually see if anything's happened. And of course, what I'm expecting is that we've read through these documents, and as you can see here, we've automatically applied the metadata to them, and then we've moved the appropriate documents to any other locations that need to be moved. And so here, this document that was for official use only has been moved to the for official use only folder. If we had some documents that had some PII, i.e. sensitive information to them, we would have moved it here. I don't think I actually uploaded one when I grabbed it, so nothing's been actually moved to this folder. Again, that's the business user experience. That's the business user experience for SharePoint 2007, SharePoint 2010, SharePoint 2013, and as I mentioned, everything that we're showing here is leveraging the native integration. So from an IT perspective, they're not having to build out custom code to support custom value properties in SharePoint. Everything that we're leveraging is coming from the managed metadata and the term store. So let's just take a quick peek at the term store. And what you'll see here is the term store. I just did a little quick refresh. And so what I'm going to do is add a new term. And when I add that new term, what we're going to see is that is going to show up in our tools. Now again, everything we're doing right here, this is all just native. This is all the way you would add a new term inside of SharePoint. And again, when I add that term in here, we should see it. I got to refresh there a little quick, a little itchy trigger finger. We'll see that the term's been added. And if I go into Taxonomy Manager, now this is actually the first peek that we've had at our tool, we will see that that term has been added into our solution. Now, as I mentioned, it's a rules-based approach. And so one of the problems with that is that the end user has to build out those rules. And so what we are going to show today is that we can accelerate that entire process of building out the rules. But what you can see is that when I add in a new term, that term gets a score of 50. And so the way this works is out of the box, without doing anything, if the document has this value, ABC123, then we would score it 50 and we would apply this meta tag value to that document. Has to be ABC and 123 right next to each other. If it was ABC in one sentence and 123 in another sentence, that would not count and we wouldn't apply this value. But if it was together, i.e. ABC 123, then we would apply that value. Now, as I mentioned, it's a native approach, which means it's bidirectional. And so if I add this new term here in Taxonomy Manager, what I expect is that if I do a nice little F5 here, that term will also show up in the term store. Now, an end user would never play in this. This is the business person, the business analyst who's responsible for the term stores and the term sets. And so you can see here that by adding that term in, again, that becomes immediately available. And so if somebody uploads a document and that value is on there, we'll go ahead and apply it. And, of course, these term sets, the power of them is that it provides guided navigation for my end user. And so again, when I'm adding these new values in, it becomes a new navigational path for my end user so that when they're trying to browse to content, they actually know the vocabulary that has been made available from the corporation and hopefully can quickly navigate to those values. And if we look here on the new terms that I just created, you can see that that update is that quick and becomes that immediately available to the end user as a new source or a new path to find and filter information on. Of course, they can select one value, they can select multi-values, and everything that we're leveraging here is going to then run against either SharePoint 2010 search, SharePoint fast search, and I should say fast search, I should say fast ESB search, and then the new flavor, SharePoint 2013 search. All of these metadata values will then be leveraged by those search platforms to hopefully provide the correct result for the end user, and if nothing else, to allow them to quickly filter down to the result that's most relevant to them. If they choose not to select the multi-value pick lists or the single item select list, we could just run the search like they normally would. And again, those term sets that we've created would all become available as refiners for the content that they're working with. And again, if I select that value, it filters down to the end user so that they can find the content that they're looking for. Okay, so one of the things that we talked about was how easy this is to build out a term set from scratch. And again, that is one of the prohibitive problems that people have within companies on trying to figure out what term set to build out. So what we're going to show here is how to quickly build out a term set from scratch. Now we do require some help, so what we need are some starting points. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we want kind of the high level, what we think the strawman taxonomy may look like at the very top level. Oftentimes people will use these as the product branches within their company or different categories from their intranet. But once we have them, we can leverage them and ask our content repository, i.e. the Sharepoint system, the file shares that we've crawled, the databases that we've crawled, to bring back statistically relevant concepts that we might want to use as additional nodes within our taxonomy. And again, if you really think about this, what we're exposing are those triple heart bypass suggestions, but rather than having to read through all of the content, we're actually exposing it here for the end user. And then the end user can quickly select these appropriate values that are relevant to them. And just like that, in literally minutes, probably seconds, we've built out a starting branch for our taxonomy. And again, because these concepts are coming from your content, we know they're accurate. Well, let's just see if this really works. Let's try it one more time with a different term, different concept. So we'll do the same approach. And again, what we're getting back are the statistically relevant concepts. And again, it's just up to the person who's building out the term set, who's going to be the subject matter expert, at least to begin with, to select the appropriate values. And again, just like that, we will have built out starting points for our term set. Now, once we've built this out, the next point is, of course, to validate it and make sure that this is accurate. And literally, all we do is click on the Reclassify Node button. What that does is expose the content and let us know how many documents we have in each particular node that we've been working on. So we see a bunch of numbers here. The first number lets us know how many documents have been classified about the topic. The second number lets us know how many documents there are in the branch. So we haven't classified anything about health, but we've actually classified 42 documents about FHSA. There are actually 243 documents in the branch itself. And again, this just lets us know that if we've added in a branch, whether it really is relevant about the topic, or if we actually have to do further clue development about the specific node that we're working with. And when we do that, we're going to follow the same approach, but we're actually going to do a couple things a little bit different. So let's look at a bigger taxonomy. And of course, if you have a taxonomy, that just makes things much easier because at least it gives us a fresh starting point. And again, when we upload that entire taxonomy, every new node, when it gets uploaded, we'll have a score of 50. And so here, we're just going to make up a new term. We're going to add the term coal mining. Again, what I'm going to expect is that new term will be added with the score of 50. And because we're actually building granular classification around this term, we want to find all the concepts that would support coal mining. Now, because it's coming from your content or your specific areas of interest, we know that these values are all relevant. Now, again, this time you see that we're actually suggesting a score. And so again, out of the box, that score has to be above 50. If it's not, then we're not going to classify the content. To test it, literally, I just click on the term right here, which in this case, I'm clicking shaft. Because I know it's always related to coal mining, because again, it's my corpus of content, we want to make sure that every document that contains the term shaft is actually getting classified about our topic. I click on the Show Documents Move, Show Documents Movement, and what I should get back is a score. And immediately we can see that the first document is not getting classified about our topic, but the second and third are, the fourth and the fifth are not. And so what we want to do is modify that score, and by doing that, what we'll expect is to see that that document will go from not being classified to being classified. We can get very detailed and very granular, and what I've done is added 2 documents to the working set so that we can actually test and model and just make sure that when we make changes, those 2 little documents are always getting changed. And so here again, we can see that right now, again, they're not, but what we're going to do is go in, make the change, and when we make that change, we'll expect that these 2 documents, because we've made this change in the score, again, from 10 to the magic number, again, out of the box being 50, that those documents will then be classified as well. And so in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and edit the score on Shaft. I'm going to change that score from 10 to 50. What we'll see is that those 2 documents will now be classified. I should say all the documents, quite frankly, that contain the term Shaft. But at a minimum, the ones that we are working with, as well as that first document, will go from not being classified to being classified. Now, we've been talking about documents. In this case, we're actually working with web pages. We could just as easily test this against a corpus of emails. And again, what this allows us to do is model and validate the terms that we're working with. So now that we can see that first document is getting classified, so are the 4th and 5th. And again, if I wanted to test just the 2 documents and see if those changes actually worked on those little documents that we were working with, by just clicking the working set here, I can see those 2 documents. And yes, they are getting classified, so the actions that I've taken are actually good, and the documents that I want to get classified are getting classified. Now again, when we apply this metadata, it doesn't have to be just for findability, because what we showed here initially is that not only can it be used to apply metadata for findability, but we can also use it to take action. And so we can move the document for official use only, or to the ITAR folder, or even delete it from the system. Now that's about everything that I want to share today as it relates to conceptClassifier and Taxonomy Manager, and aligning email into your SharePoint 2010 or SharePoint 2013 repositories. I'm going to open it up to my colleague Rob to see if he has any last questions that I should say any last comments that he'd like to make about this overall solution. And
thanks, Don.
I'm trying to get a question.
Every time I think, oh, I should bring something up, you go and mention it just a few minutes later. So I'm actually good at this point.
Okay.
But thank you very much for showing this today.
With that said, I wanted to thank everybody for attending this webinar. Again, if you have any questions that have popped up after our session, please feel free to send them to us, and we will address them out to not only you, but the group as well. We will send out the slide deck as well as the recording link. We're looking forward to a great 2013, and please feel free to join the rest of our webinar series throughout the year. With that said, this is Don Miller and Rob DuMont signing off. Have a great day, and we hope to be working with you soon.